What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Valley Experience podcast, an Arizona sports podcast between two diehard AZ sports fans. I'm Ryan Pasiecznik, alongside, as always, Logan Lober. Logan, lots of news again this week as the MLB All-Star Weekend is upon us. Lots of incredible news again to talk about, especially when it pertains to the Diamondbacks. But first up, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. This is the first episode that I've done outside of the Valley. So I'm actually recording this here in Traverse City, Michigan. Had to work around some time zone differences, but we're here and we're happy to be talking some Valley sports.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, like, just as far as the weather goes, I'm sure, a lot cooler there than it is here in the valley, correct?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, in the evenings we got our sweatshirts on, which is just something that is not happening in Arizona right now. So nice to get away from the heat, but it's I don't want to get away from my Arizona sports team. So that's why we're here talking about that today.
Love that passion and love that energy, man. All righty. We kick off today's show with news that just broke moments ago as the MLB draft is currently being held right now. And the Diamondbacks have selected with the 12th overall pick Tommy Troy, who is a third baseman out of Stanford. Troy was the 2023 Pac 12 batting champion with a 404 batting average and was also a 2023 Pac 12 all conference and all defensive team. So certainly, I think when you're talking about positions of need for the Diamondbacks, especially when you look in the infield, third baseman is definitely a position of need for them. And they got a guy in Tommy Troy who can definitely, hopefully, come in and contribute maybe down the road as he looks to develop.
Troy seems like a good pick for the D-backs. When I watched the little highlight reel they did on ESPN after the pick, seems like a pretty solid power bat, despite a smaller frame. Seems to have a good bat speed, and they said when they announced his name, they said shortstop, and then on the screen it said third baseman, and then when they're kind of talking about him on the broadcast, they mentioned second base as well. So it seems like a versatile infield guy, and we'll see in a couple of years how he moves up the farm system, which has been, the D-backs have had a lot of success in that area in the last couple of years. So, all signs seem to be positive right off the bat with Tommy Troy.
Absolutely. And especially when you consider that he comes from one of the more prestigious college baseball programs in the country in Stanford, that also has to be something that is certainly going to present a lot of positives for the Diamondbacks in the future. And especially too, now when we talk about positions of need here for the Diamondbacks, I mean, third baseman, again, is one that I think is obviously a position of need for them at the moment. Um, and so it's good that the Diamondbacks were able to get a guy like Tommy Troy, and hopefully he can be that guy that can really solidify that spot for many years moving forward into the future.
Yeah, and like we said, third base has been, as of right now, it's seems to be a position of need for the D-backs, and we're gonna get a lot into that. We're gonna go more into that here shortly, as we're gonna be giving player reviews for a lot of the key players on the Diamondbacks this year. Like you said in the beginning, first half has come to a close, and it's a little different vibe around the D-backs now. As this is actually the first episode that we've done where the D-backs don't have possession of first place right now. So, kind of came into the end of the first half on a bit of a cold streak, and we're gonna go a lot into depth about these players and the first halves that they have had.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you just touched upon it. You said it perfectly right there about the Diamondbacks not ending the first half of the season really on the best of terms. It was really pretty much a roller coaster week for them because first off, you had that awful series against the Mets, which made me Frank the Tank level pissed off about the way that series went. The Diamondbacks got swept for the first time all season long. And in the third game of that series, they actually got shut out for the first time all season. But they did have a nice bounce back series against the Pirates. And they also got some good news in that series as well, because also in the end of that third game in the Mets series, Corbin Carroll hurt his shoulder, and immediately all of Diamondbacks Nation was just holding their breath, hoping that it was something that was minor, because Corbin Carroll did have surgery on that shoulder, I think a couple years ago. And so there was obviously concerns about him re-injuring it, but it was great to see that he was back on the field doing Corbin Carroll things. And especially he had a big time game winning hit yesterday in the bottom of the 10th inning, which was also the Diamondbacks' first win in extra innings all season long. So it is definitely disappointing that the Diamondbacks had that recent slide, but I'm happy that at least their all-star player and superstar franchise guy and Corbin Carroll is back and healthy and also looking to play in the all-star game, and that the Diamondbacks are at least in a position where they can maybe look to take back that first place spot in the National League West after the all-star break.
Yeah, I mean, thank God that Corbin Carroll seems to be okay. That was just the last thing that we needed heading into the end of the first half. We talked about it on last episode, saying that, just get into the All-Star break as healthy as you can, and having Corbin Carroll potentially out for the year was the complete opposite of that. So thank God that he is okay. Excited to see him start in the All-Star game in his hometown. So just not the best end to the end of the first half, but at the end of the day, D-backs are tied for first place in the NL West. So, and if you would have told us that before the season started, I think D-backs fans would be just fine with that. So just a much needed break for the team, for the offense especially. So just hope to come out in the second half as we started the first half this year.
Absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see like what type of moves they make down the stretch as well, because you'd have to expect them, now that they're in a position where they can contend, that they'd be looking to make some moves as the deadline approaches. I would like to actually get into your player report card, because Logan, you have some really good grades, I think, on all of the main Diamondbacks players that are here. So would you like to get into that right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So just gonna, we didn't do all the players that have appeared in the majors this year with the D-backs, but we did a good majority of them with the starters, the relievers, and most of the hitters. So we're gonna start off the reviews here with the starting pitchers, what's been the starting five for a good majority of the year. Gonna just start off with Zach Gallen. Don't think there is too much to say about Zach Gallen. Pretty straightforward. I gave him an A for his first half. It's looking like he will be the starting pitcher for the NL in the All-Star game, which will be super exciting. And he is right in the mix for the Cy Young. So I mean, pretty simple. I give Zach Gallen an A for the first half.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point about Zach Gallen. I mean, he's currently tied for first in all of baseball right now with 11 wins on the season. His ERA, it kind of got jacked up a little bit because he got lit up in that series against the Angels, but he bounced back nicely against the Pirates. He went 7 innings, I believe, gave up only one run, and I believe 4 hits. So that was a very nice Zach Gallen outing there. And I think like he's easily a top 3 front runner in the National League right now to win the Cy Young Award winner. What he's been able to do has been just absolutely insane. And he's been really the man who has led this Diamondbacks starting pitching staff throughout most of this season, and will, I think, continue to do it at a high level, just because of how awesome of a command he has and how disciplined of a pitcher he is as well. You never see him get too flustered.
Absolutely. And then our second starting pitcher, we have Merrill Kelly, who unfortunately went into the All-Star break on the injured list. Hopefully he's back shortly after as we get underway in the second half. But despite the injury, Merrill has had an excellent year. I went ahead and gave him an A minus. Merrill has he's improved every single year since the Diamondbacks signed him. And this year has definitely been the most impressive, I would say. He's been an excellent number 2 option. And, if it wasn't for Zach Gallen, I mean, Merrill Kelly would be getting a lot of love too. And he still should be getting a lot of love, because he goes out there every fifth day, and he's gonna give you quality start after quality start. So want to get Merrill back soon as we can, because he's been amazing this year. So yeah, gonna give him an A- for his first half.
That's a good grade, and I'd certainly be right on board with that. Merrill Kelly has been an excellent second option guy in the Diamondbacks rotation. When you talk about someone who again was, when you talk about Zach Gallen being your main guy in the starting pitching rotation, you start to look down the line. I mean, Diamondbacks, they have Tommy Henry, who has been well as of late, but then you also look at guys like Ryan Nelson. They had Madison Bumgarner in there, who was just terrible. And then they had Zach Davies. Merrill Kelly, if not for him, I guarantee the Diamondbacks would not be in the type of position that they're in right now, because outside of both Kelly and Gallen, their starting pitching certainly, I think, presents its worries. But nonetheless, Merrill is another one of those guys where he was overseas playing ball, and then he signed with the Diamondbacks in 2019. Had a pretty good year last year. He had 13 wins, 8 losses. ERA was right around, I think, 3.25 or something like that. And this year too, he's been just rock solid. He's a guy, again, that, like Zach Gallen, he's a competitor on the mound. He's got great control of the ball. He never gets too high on himself. He never gets too low on himself. Just another well-rounded individual as well. And certainly, I think, just another stronghold for the Diamondbacks pitching staff as well. And hopefully they can get him back soon, because he's going to be key for their starting rotation moving forward, as he has been all the way up to this point in the season.
Yeah, so great grades for the first two guys on this list. But coming up next is a not so good grade, and that is with Zach Davies, who was, really the D-backs' only offseason move in terms of the starting pitchers. He was on the team last year, and the D-backs decided to re-sign him going into this year, and that was their only starting pitcher that they addressed in the offseason. So, he was solid last year. He was a solid, 4 or 5 guy, went out there, and you could count on him to, go 5 innings, give up 2 or 3 runs. So, I understood bringing him back, but unfortunately for his first half grade, I'm going to go with the D for Zach Davies, unfortunately.
Yeah, Zach Davies is a guy that hasn't been the best of all of the starting pitchers in the Diamondbacks rotation. He has been known to get a lot of base on balls and not really a high strikeout rate guy. Um, and he was okay for the Diamondbacks last year. He did have 2 wins, 5 losses, and his ERA was right around 4.09. But overall, this year, it's been a completely different story. This year, his ERA was right around 6.37. I believe he only has one. Yeah, he has 1 win on the year and has 5 losses. So not the best outing, from Zach, or not the best season, I should say, from Zach Davies up to this point. And if the Diamondbacks are really going to be aggressive come trade deadline for the starting pitching, I wouldn't be surprised if they get another starting pitcher, if they would look to maybe potentially waive or maybe designate Davies for assignment, because he struggled. He struggled this year, to say the least.
Yeah, he really has struggled, and this for some reason I can't seem to get away from Zach Davies. I put this on my Twitter, but going back to last year, I think every single game I've been to going back to last year, including spring training this year, for some reason, Zach Davies is always on the mound, and that's why I just have had the worst luck going to games this year. The D-backs have always lost, and it's mostly due to the fact that Zach Davies is pitching. So I hope that the Zach Davies era is coming to an end in Arizona. I really do, because he just Like, I mean, he was fine last year. You mentioned he put up an ERA just above 4, which, if those type of guys at the back end of your rotation can be serviceable. But yeah, it's been a completely different story this year. He's really struggled, and I don't expect him to be around too much longer, especially if starting pitcher is a position they target at the deadline. So moving on to the fourth starter is going to be Tommy Henry, who outside of the top two guys in Gallen and Kelly, he has probably been their best guy outside of those two. He's seems like he's improving with every start. He is going to go out and give you a good 6 innings, quality start, give up a couple runs, but especially being the only lefty in the rotation, he's been a really good guy to have. And he's young, so I would hope that it just continues to get better with each time he goes out. But yeah, I mean, he's got a sub 4 ERA, and he's got a 5-1 record. So really good first half for Tommy Henry, and my grade for him is going to be a B.
Yeah, that's a good grade. I'd probably put him in that same category as well because right now, I mean, if you just look at his stats, you mentioned he has a 5-1 record. His ERA is right around 3.75. He has 51 strikeouts on the year, but 29 base on balls. I mean, I would like to see him, maybe start to cut down the walks a little bit, but I think really for the most part, like he's been, like you said, just super solid. In that last start that he had against the Angels, he did give up that home run to Shohei Ohtani, which I believe, to my knowledge, was the longest home run of Shohei Ohtani's career. But we'll give him a pass for that because when you're going up against quite possibly the greatest baseball player of all time in Shohei Ohtani, you can get away with giving up a home run here and there, but as long as you just don't do it consistently. But yeah, he's been great. He was one of the Diamondbacks' top pitching prospects coming out of their farm system. He came around last year, did have a rough couple of first starts, but then he started to pick it back up. And this year, you start to wonder what the Diamondbacks really have in him. In his first game, I believe, which was against the Giants, he kind of got roughed up a bit there, but yeah, like you said, over his past few starts, he's been looking great.
All right, so wrapping up the starting rotation grades is going to be Ryan Nelson, who I'm going to go ahead and give him a C- for the first half. He's had a couple of good starts, but it's been a pretty inconsistent first half of the year for Ryan. But still a young pitcher. He had a very encouraging start at the end of last year, so hopefully he can find that groove back that he had from last year, and start to put up some better numbers coming into the second half, because he's had some solid starts to end the first half, but his last start didn't end on the best note, as that was one of his worst starts of the year. But I'm gonna go C- for Ryan. Would like to see some improvements going into the second half. Okay, so we went through a little bit of some technical difficulties there, but nonetheless, we are back, and we are going to be moving on to the bullpen rankings, or the bullpen report card for the first half. And, we're not going to go through each member of the bullpen because, there's been a lot of guys up and down. So we're really just going to be focusing on the 3 guys that the D-backs added in the off season, which were bringing back Andrew Chafin, Miguel Castro, and Scott McGough. So those guys, they've kind of all been up and down in the first half. They've all had their moments, their good moments and some bad moments. Honestly, I think all of those guys would get a B, in my opinion, for their first half. I think Scott McGough, maybe you could go B+, and maybe Miguel Castro B-, Andrew Chafin B, but for the most part, I think all those guys are in the B range. Each of them have had chances to close out games. Some have had success, some of them haven't. But I think all 3 of these guys, they're good pieces to have in your bullpen. But when it comes to shutting down the game in the ninth inning, in a clutch situation. I think the D-backs are still looking for that guy. But nonetheless, I think all three of those guys have had pretty solid first halves, given that, the expectations weren't super high for those guys.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I agree with everything that you said. I would certainly give them a B as well. Um, I'd probably say out of the three, probably McGuff has been the best, especially lately. I mean, he did have that breakdown of a game against the Rays, but he was able to bounce back against the Angels, and he was able to manage the game in that second to last game against the Pirates. So yeah, I mean, he's been good. Chafin, he's also been pretty solid all season long as well. I mean, he did have that rough go around in the second game of the Mets series when the Diamondbacks were leading 1-0 and Francisco Alvarez hit a solo home run. And then he gave up another run shortly afterwards, and the Diamondbacks ended up losing that game 2-1. Same thing with Miguel Castro. You mentioned he's been solid, like not really necessarily relying on him to close games, but also if you need a guy to just relieve your starting pitcher, he's been pretty good. So yeah, I think that those guys certainly are good bullpen arms to have. But yeah, more so to your point, they aren't, I think, reliable enough to be. I think each one of them aren't reliable enough to be your closer at this point. And hopefully the Diamondbacks could get that position addressed as well. But you also can't take away from how solid of players that they've been this year, especially when the Diamondbacks need them to come up big, which for the most part they have.
Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the offense now, and we are going to start behind the plate with the backstop duo of Gabby Moreno and Carson Kelly. So starting off with Gabby Moreno, he came over in the Dalton Varsho trade in the offseason, kind of the big piece, the big headline piece of that deal, as he was, a top prospect in baseball with the Blue Jays. He had a short stint with them at the end of last year. And, people were really excited about what Gabby could bring. He had great start in spring training and, was kind of looking to enter the year splitting time with Carson Kelly. But obviously Carson Kelly went down during spring training. So Moreno got the starting nod for a good chunk of the year until Carson Kelly came back recently. And, Gabby showed good signs to start the year. He was mostly known for what he would bring on the offensive side. And, he really surprised some of us with his arm behind the plate. He had some was great statistics wise from throwing guys out, trying to steal. And, that was a good surprise because, like I said, most of us looked at him as more of an offensive catcher. So, Gabby's had his ups and downs. I'm going to go ahead and give him a B- for his first half grade. He's been hitting well the last 7 games. His average is just under 400, but in the last 30 games, his average is actually just 212 and the slugging is only 259. So the only thing with Gabby is that, yeah, he has a good bat, but one of the things he struggles with is the power. And, that's something, we'd like to see improved, but, he's still very young. And, I think the positives that we've seen have been very good for just a 20-year-old, 23-year-old, I believe.
Yeah, that's a great point with Gabby Moreno. And you mentioned how he's been on that recent slide lately. I think it's really just due to in large part because Carson Kelly was being propped up to be the Diamondbacks' primary catcher at the beginning of the season, but he got injured in spring training, and Gabby had to do a lot as the starting pitcher. I mean, there would be times where he barely ever got an off day, and so that was when the Diamondbacks had to incorporate Jose Herrera in there. But yeah, I mean, you look at Gabby's batting average right now. It's right around 267. He is a guy that you're right, can certainly get guys on, like he has 26 RBIs on the season. And so like he can get guys into position, like with runners in scoring position. He's more consistent on that end. But you're right. I think when you also talk about like the power bat in him, Granted, he only has 2 home runs on the entire year. And I think that he's more capable of certainly slugging them if he needs to, but you're right. He needs to probably gain a little bit more of power and upside on the bat, just as far as hitting those long home runs. But look, he's been, I think, better than advertised as well. I think it's no secret that the Diamondbacks were relying on Carson Kelly to be their franchise catcher moving forward. And I don't think he's lived up to those expectations up to this point. And so to see Gabby Marino perform at the level that he has, I think that the Diamondbacks are going to be in really good hands for the near future moving forward, as long as they have Gabby as their catcher.
Moving on to the other catcher on the team is going to be Carson Kelly, who, hasn't really played much this year. He just came back a few weeks ago from that broken wrist, I believe it was, that he injured in spring training. And honestly, it's a small sample size, but for his first half, I am going to give Carson Kelly a D, just because, he is hitting 175 on the season. And, he hasn't been able to get it going offensively this year. And, every time that it seems like Carson Kelly's finally starting to get over that hump, it seems like it's either an injury or he gets cold with the bat or something like that happens. So it's been a really inconsistent tenure for Carson Kelly as a D-back. And, I'm glad that we have Gabby Moreno now, kind of like a young guy that we can look forward to in the future, because it doesn't look like Carson Kelly really worked out in that trade that we did with the Cardinals a few years back.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And he was okay in his first year here in 2019. His batting average was right around 245, had 47 RBIs, but then you started to see he kind of regressed a little bit. I mean, his batting average in 2020 was 221. Now, granted, the Diamondbacks only played 63 games because it was a COVID shortened season. In 2021, his batting average was right around 240. In 2022, batting average right around 211. And this season, it's only 163. And so, I mean, he's a guy that has a very high strikeout rate. He's a guy that, like you said, cannot hit the ball at a consistent level, especially compared to Gabby Marino. He's got some power. I've seen times where he has just crushed balls into the stands. So I think in that aspect, as far as being I think he's a slightly better slugger than Gabby is, but overall, he doesn't even come close to being the complete catcher that Gabby Marino is. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Diamondbacks would look to shop him in the future. I don't know exactly what you could get for him. He is a guy, maybe at best, or certainly at this point, where he could be certainly a backup catcher, because at this point, Gabby Marino, I think, has solidified himself as being your primary catcher, like we just analyzed previously. But for Carson Kelly, I think at this point, if you're unable to trade him, then he's probably just going to be a good backup to fill in for Gabby.
Yeah, and I definitely think Carson can be a good backup for the D-backs or for another team if that's what it comes to. But it's all about staying healthy with him, and unfortunately, that's just something he hasn't been able to do in his time here with the Diamondbacks. So moving on now to the infield, and we are going to start off with Ketel Marte, who we talked a lot about in the previous episode. And that was right before the reserves were going to be announced. So we were kind of under the impression that Marte was going to be selected as a reserve, but he wasn't, unfortunately. So that was kind of a bummer that he didn't get picked, because I definitely think he is deserving. I think he's one of the best second basemen in baseball, and he's been having one of the best seasons regardless of position this year. So, like I said, we talked about Ketel a lot in the last episode, so we won't go too in depth here. But I am going to give Ketel an A, despite not making the All-Star team. Hopefully he can maybe still sneak in as maybe an injury replacement. But I mean, he's had an excellent season. He is finally healthy, and he is looking like his old all-star self from a few years back.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's absolute blasphemy that he did not get into the All-Star game because, like we analyzed last week, I mean, he is an excellent switch hitter. He's been solid both offensively and defensively. And I know like nothing else really has to be said about how dominant this guy is. And it's just really unfortunate that he wasn't able to make the cut. I mean, the All-Star game is tomorrow, so maybe at the very, very last minute, there could be some guy that could either tap out or decide not to play. And maybe Cattell gets in, but at this point, I think that's highly unlikely. But nonetheless, it shouldn't take away from just the incredible season that Cattell has been having up to this point and hopefully should continue to have moving forward.
Moving on to our next guy is going to be Christian Walker, who we also did talk about a little bit in last episode. Just been, a great bet to have in the middle of our lineup. And he's the guy that plays every single day. He's going to give you great defense, great at bats, and, just an all around great first baseman. So, going to go ahead and give Christian a B plus just because, he is a guy that is a bit streaky. When he's hot, and when he's cold, he gets pretty cold. So, can't take anything away from Christian. He's had a great season. But would like to see a little bit more consistency there. But that's just a little nitpicky there.
Yeah, absolutely. But nonetheless, I think what we love about Christian Walker is that he's a good power bat to have on your squad, which he's proven to be just that ever since he took over first base. And you'd mentioned about just defensively as well. He's been just dominant there. I mean, you see there'll be line drive balls that'll be coming directly to him, and he just finds a way to go and catch it. It's almost like he has stickum in his glove or something like that. And he had that incredible defensive play, of course, in the second game against the Pirates. Really saved the game because there was a ball that was just about to go along the right field line, and Christian just made an incredible backhanded play to Scott McGuff to go and get the final out. And he's been money just all season long. Very underappreciated, certainly in my opinion. I would have liked to have seen him get more recognition for the All-Star game, but nonetheless, you can't be any happier from the production that you're getting out of Christian Walker this season.
Yeah, I agree. And then so now moving over to the hot corner, we're going to start off with Evan Longoria, who the D-backs added this offseason. And I'm going to go ahead and give Longo an A. Now that is for his role. I don't think, like I said, Christian Walker, I gave a B plus. I don't think Longo's been better than Christian Walker, but just for what we were expecting coming into the season and for the the platoon veteran role that Longo has played, I think he has done an excellent job, which is why I gave him an A. He's a guy that is mostly going to be playing against lefties, and he's done an excellent job of that. His OPS for the season is over 800, and he's hitting about 270 against lefties. So Longo's done everything we've asked him to do, and even a little bit more. And he's been, for his role, like I said, I think he's done an excellent job this season as that veteran presence in the locker room.
Yeah, he's been an excellent veteran presence to this team. Coming in, obviously, we know Evan Longoria from his time with the Rays. He spent the past few seasons with the Giants. But yeah, this is a guy that obviously he's an experienced player. He is a great leader. You're not expecting him to be your starting third baseman, I think, on a weekly basis. That was Josh Rojas from the very beginning, but he, of course, got DFA'd to Reno. And then they kind of mixed it up now with Emmanuel Rivera and Evan Longoria. But hats off to Longo. He's, again, just, I think, continuing to age like fine wine. The longevity that this guy has is just insane. And yeah, tip my hat off to him. He's been a great addition thus far, and I'm happy to have him.
Moving on to the other third baseman that the D-backs have had this year is going to be Emmanuel Rivera. And, he was a guy that didn't make the team out of spring training, but was up shortly after that due to some of the struggles they've had offensively. And, I think overall Rivera's had a pretty solid year. He is a guy that, surprised a lot of us last year after, we got him for, you know, what was left of Luke Weaver. So, he's done good for, kind of what we expected. And he's another guy like Longo who hits lefties really well. He's actually hitting 351 against lefties this year, which is really good, but kind of like we talked about with Gabby Moreno, he's just the power really hasn't been there this year. So, I mean, yeah, he can hit for average, but he's not really a guy that you're expecting to hit the ball out of the ballpark a lot. So, would like to see a little bit more, consistent power and not even just home runs, just extra base hits because, it's really only, not very hard hit balls and singles for Emmanuel Rivera. So because of that, I'm gonna go ahead and give him a C plus. Um, nothing great, but nothing too bad. He's a guy that, I'm fine having him in the lineup 2 out of 3 games a series.
Yeah, I think that's a fair grade. And look, Emmanuel Rivera he's a solid role player. I think he's another solid role player to this team as well. He's not your starting third base. I mean, I wouldn't trust him being your starting third baseman on the season. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, he's a guy that I mean, he has only one home run on the year. He only has 20 RBIs. His batting average is right around 288, which it was a little bit higher to start the season, but he's kind of been in a little bit of a slump. Actually, as a matter of fact, right now, he's currently working on an 0-11 streak right now. So I'd like to see him get a little bit more consistently because we've seen it that he's capable, I think, of, like you said, just getting those base hits, driving in those runs when you need him to. And so hopefully he can improve that aspect of his game. But yeah, for the most part, especially when you consider that you gave up Luke Weaver in order to acquire him, that was a solid win for the Diamondbacks in that trade.
Yeah, I agree. So moving on to the middle infielders now. Gonna start off with Nick Ahmed, who was also injured to start the year and was injured for the majority of last year, which is why Perdomo was getting all the reps at shortstop last year and continued to do that this year. But just kind of similar situation as Carson Kelly. Nick just hasn't been able to put it all together. He's had trouble staying healthy, just trouble offensively for his entire career. He what you're going to get from him in the field. He's been one of the best shortstops in baseball over the last 5 to 10 years. But unfortunately, it's been a rough go for Ahmed this year. This is actually, if you're not counting the COVID shortened season, this has been his lowest fielding percentage since his rookie year. So it's been a rough go for Ahmed in the field as well as at the plate, which is honestly just something that we've been used to with Nick. His OPS is under 600 and he's only hitting about 176 with runners in scoring position. So I'm gonna give Nick a D for his first half grade. Just he's been a good guy to have in the locker room. He's a veteran guy and he's been an amazing fielding shortstop, but unfortunately this year it just hasn't been what we've been accustomed to.
Yeah, and he's always you just mentioned it that I mean he's always been a guy that really hasn't put up the best offensive numbers I think throughout his entire career, but when you talk about defensively, he's been just excellent when it comes to just fielding balls and throwing guys out and making those tough defensive plays as we've just seen from Nick Ahmed all throughout his career with the Diamondbacks. But it's going to be curious to see here. I mean, especially with the ascension of Geraldo Perdomo, who I think has really solidified himself as being that starting shortstop. You're probably most likely going to see Nick now be just like on the back end now, especially because Geraldo's game is a lot better than what Nick's is. But nonetheless, Nick's been a great Diamondback, but it just sucks that he's not having the type of season that I think all of us would have hoped he would.
Yeah, it really does. So rounding out the rest of the infield is going to be with our newest all-star, Geraldo Perdomo, which is just, if you would have told me that last year that Geraldo Perdomo would be an all-star, Dbacks fans would have called you absolutely crazy for that one, because this is a guy who statistically was one of the worst hitters in baseball last year. He had the second lowest weighted runs created plus in the majors, which is one of the most popular analytical stats in baseball as of right now. So yeah, Perdomo was at the very bottom of the entire league last year, and this year has been the complete opposite of that, obviously, with him being an all-star. So I mean, he was hitting close to 400 for like the first couple months of the year, which just came out of nowhere. And it's definitely cooled down as of now, but just from where he was last year to where he is now is just a huge win for him and for the Diamondbacks. He's been a guy who, even though he started off the year so hot, he was at the bottom of the order for a majority of the season. And just as of, a month or two ago, he moved up to the leadoff spot, and the success continued from there. So I absolutely think he was deserving of an all-star spot. And, he's had an amazing year. So I'm going to give Perdomo an A, even though he has struggled towards the end of the first half, just the improvement from last year justifies an A grade here.
Yeah, Geraldo Perdomo has been exceptional this season. As a matter of fact, these were his stats in 2022. So he played in 148 games. His batting average was 195. His on-base percentage was 285. His slugging percentage was 262. And his OPS was 547. For the year, he hit 5 home runs, 40 RBIs, and had 9 stolen bases. In 2023, he has played 73 games. His batting average is 274. His on-base percentage is 379. His slugging percentage is 413. And his OPS is 791. For the year, he's hit 5 home runs, 33 RBIs, and has 10 stolen bases. The fact that he's played almost half as many games up to this point and he's putting up those statistics goes to show just how much of an improvement he's had. Oh, by the way, this is also according to the Washington Post. Perdomo is currently 4th in the league in batting average with runners in scoring position at 382. And I'd also like to say, like, he had a great save. He had a great setup for the Diamondbacks in that Pirates series in game 2 when it went into extra innings because he had 2 men on base. Geraldo had a nice sacrifice bunt to go and move runners up. So this guy has been just a complete package since he's been here, which, yeah, if somebody were to tell me that Geraldo Perdomo was going to be putting up these stats and be an all-star in 2023, I would have thought that they were high on crack or something like that. But the fact now that Geraldo Perdomo is an all-star, it's awesome to see. And it's also great for him as well to have this type of a bounce back season because he's just an exceptional player. And I think the Diamondbacks certainly have something there at shortstop for the near future.
Yeah, they definitely do have something there. Just it's amazing to see the improvement and all the hard work that Perdomo put in. He definitely deserved this all-star nod. So moving on and wrapping this first half report cards up with the outfield, and we're gonna lead things off with the face of the franchise, Corbin Carroll. Really, I mean, what else is there to say that we haven't said already? But I mean, Corbin Carroll gets an A+. I don't think there's any debate about that. Thank God that he's all right. He didn't get injured because we need this guy if we want to have the success that we think we're able to this year. And yeah, I mean, A+ for Corbin Carroll. This guy does it all. He's running away with the Rookie of the Year. He's starting the All-Star game in the outfield, and he's still right there in the MVP conversation, in my opinion. So A+ for Corbin Carroll, Gold Star, whatever you want to call it. He's done it all this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing else really has to be said about Corbin Carroll that we've already said in previous episodes, other than the fact that he's just been sensational. He did have that scare with the shoulder injury, which, I mean, for a lot of us Diamondbacks fans, we were just holding our breaths, hoping that he was going to be okay. And for him to go and come back the following day and actually play, all throughout the tail end of the first half. It was a sight for sore eyes, and it'll be super exciting to see him in the All-Star game, given that he's from Seattle, and I'm sure that's a dream come true for him. But we, as Diamondbacks fans, are blessed to have Corbin Carroll on our baseball team.
We absolutely are. So moving on to another All-Star, 3 All-Stars in a row for this list, and it's going to be Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who came over with Gabby Moreno in the Dalton Varsho trade. And, you know, most of us D-backs fans were more excited about what Gabby Moreno was going to bring to the squad from that trade. But, you know, Lourdes Gurriel he's been the guy. He's been the headliner of the Dalton Varsho trade. So obviously with making the All-Star game and, you know, just doing everything he has this year, he like some of the other guys, it's been, you know, a little inconsistent at times. You know, he was red hot for a while there, and then, you know, he had a little bit of an injury. I think it was around like the Tigers series, and, you know, he was in a bit of a slump there, but, you know, he has picked it up a little bit, hitting a couple home runs to wrap up the first half. But, you know, I'm going to go ahead and give Lourdes a B plus, just because, you know, he's been amazing this season, but, you know, he's still, you know, gone through some cold streaks here and there. But I mean, nothing really much to complain about from Lourdes. Love the type of season he's had.
Yeah, absolutely. And circling back to your point about, you know, Lourdes Gurriel, Pina power. Yeah, really, ever since he came back from injury, which he did get injured right around the Detroit Tigers series, he's been kind of cold and hasn't really been the consistent hitter that he was previously. And I think a B plus certainly is a fair grade to give him, because I mean, he hasn't been awful, but he just hasn't hit as consistently as he had previously. And I think that as when you look at just how dominant of a player that he was beforehand, we can just only hope that maybe the All-Star break is going to maybe help him come along with whatever injuries he's dealing with and maybe get him back on the right track post All-Star break. Something that is intriguing about him as well is, according to the Bally Sports broadcast, I think this was yesterday, they said that Lourdes Gurriel, when he's playing in the outfield, which normally he plays in left field, he has 0 errors. And he's had a few miraculous plays that when he's come up big for the Diamondbacks. The one most notable that I think about is when he came up with a big save in the Braves series. So, and then he also had a nice gloving, like, you know, diving catch in the Braves series, or not the Braves series, but the Angels series as well. So, you know, we can only hope that Lourdes Gurriel can continue to just get back on that hot hitting streak and build sandcastles like he does best. And yeah, props to Pina Power. He's been awesome.
Wrapping this thing up with our last two players. First, we're gonna go with Alek Thomas, who, you know, he had a pretty shaky start to the year, which ultimately led to him being sent down to Reno. But since he's been up, he has shown a lot of improvements. He's hit home runs in back-to-back games, and, you know, in that series finale against the Pirates, that home run actually came off a lefty. So, you know, he has improved a lot. I am gonna go with the C plus for Alek, just because, you know, he did have to be sent down to Reno. The bat just, it's still not where we want it to be. I still have a lot of faith in Alek Thomas. He plays excellent defense in center field, and, you know, hopefully that bat can come along, because, you know, that was kind of the question of the offseason last year is, you know, we knew Corbin Carroll was going to be untouchable, but between Varsho, Alek Thomas, and Jake McCarthy, who was going to be the guy that the D-backs ended up trading? And ultimately that was Dalton Varsho, who has had his fair share of struggles too. But, you know, D-backs fans know this too well, that it seems like a lot of their trades, whoever they trade, it's always the wrong guy, and he ends up having a great career. And so far, the D-backs seem to be winning the Varsho trade. Alek Thomas has had a solid year. Would just like to see the bat improve a little bit.
Yeah, Alek Thomas has been solid ever since he's been with the Diamondbacks. You're right. I would like to see him as well, become a much more consistent hitter. But defensively, he just anchors down that center field. Every time there are balls that come his direction, you almost know that most of the time he's going to just track him down. And that's just been, I think, like, the strong point of his game. One thing I will say is that I think the hitters coaches were, I think, really looking on shoring up his leg kick and his stance when he's in the box. And um, I think he's proven to certainly get that taken care of, because ever since he came back from Reno, he's seemed to be hitting the ball a little bit more consistently. But overall, I just like to see much more offensively from him than I think what we've been giving this at this point. But nonetheless, he's an excellent player.
All right, wrapping up our first half report cards for the Diamondbacks, and this list is going to end with Jake McCarthy, who I'm going to go ahead and give Jake a B- for his first half. He like Alec Thomas did have to have a short stint in Reno, but since coming back up, he has showed a lot of improvements. Jake is a guy who just is going to play excellent defense in the outfield, whether it's left, center, or right. And, we know how fast Jake is. He steals a bunch of bases. And, the bat has improved as well since coming back up from Reno, but, it still hasn't been as hot as it was to end last year, where, he was consistently hitting, in the top of our lineup. So, he's slowly moved back up the lineup this year, but still some inconsistencies there. But there still is a lot of value with Jake with his defense and his speed. So gonna go ahead and give Jake a B- for his first half.
Yeah, I think Jake probably would have a much higher grade if he would be swinging the bat a lot more consistently like he was last season. But you also have to take into account as well that, like, he did miss a certain portion of the season after being sent down to Reno just to go and get some things fixed up there. But yeah, he's another guy as well, where it's like when he's on base and you're a pitcher who's on the mound, you got to really consider him going and trying to steal another base, just because he's got that sneaky quickness to him, almost like Corbin Carroll does. But Jake's been doing great. I mean, he's been a solid addition to the Diamondbacks outfield ever since they called him up. And we can only just continue to hope that he's going to ascend, which I think he definitely is going to. I think definitely, I mean, since the first half of the season is over with, now he'll be able to get some much needed rest and come back up stronger.
That right there wraps up our D-backs first half grades. A lot to be excited about and still some areas to improve. So, I think, like we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, it's the All-Star break couldn't have come at a better time for this team. We did struggle a bit towards the end there. So hopefully we can come out strong in the second half and keep going for this National League West Division and ultimately a playoff spot. So that's going to wrap up our list, and we are going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. But before we do, we are going to speak a little bit on the Suns and their summer league just kicked off. They've played one game to this point, and we saw some good signs from their second round pick Tumani Kamara and their newest addition in Jordan Goodwin. So lots of encouraging stuff there. Tumani had 20 points and Jordan Goodwin also had 12, but did leave with a bit of an injury. Hopefully nothing too serious there. But yeah, I mean, the last couple of years we haven't really had much to be excited about in the Suns Summer League, since we haven't really had too much young players. But it seems some exciting stuff this year with Tumani, and hopefully Jordan Goodwin gets out there a couple more times.
Tumani Kamara had a really good debut for the Suns in the summer league. He did have those 20 points, as you just mentioned. I thought it was also interesting, too, that the Suns didn't sign him to a two-way contract, but also a standard contract as well. So they must be banking on the fact that he's going to be coming in and contributing immediately at a high level. I could see him now, obviously, being a bench player to start off with, and maybe if he continues to improve, he could find his way into the starting lineup at some point, although it probably would be at a point if the Suns are in a really good position in the Western Conference. But it should be intriguing to see how Tumani does the rest of this summer league. As you also just mentioned, as well, as Suns fans, we really haven't had a summer league to look forward to. I'd probably say since the Suns drafted DeAndre Ayton. We also looked forward to it as well when they were really starting the rebuild of the team as well. I can remember Devin Booker in his first summer league was just exceptional. Same thing along with Marquise Chris. So, yeah, it's great to at least have something for us Suns fans to look forward to see our draft pick, Tumani Kamara, try and hopefully produce at a high level and go out and give us a good showing before the regular season starts. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us here on the Valley Experience podcast. Alongside Logan Lober, I'm Ryan Pasiecznik. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we always appreciate your guys' love and support. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, make sure to go and check us out on Instagram and Twitter for more exciting content on Arizona sports and everything sports related. We appreciate you guys. We will be back next week, as always, to go and discuss more sports topics related not only to Arizona, but also probably with other sports as well. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you all next week.
Yeah, thank you guys again for all the support you guys showed in our last episode. That was our most viewed episode by far. It's a little bit over 300 views. So thank you guys so much for the support on that one. And that just that makes us want to do these even more. So thank you guys for the support. Make sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or just give us a follow if you're listening on audio version. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.